Good morning. This is a basic on woodwop 1.1. Woodwop works almost the same as CAD. What you have to do is you have to put your panel sizes in, but this is called a variable list. So if you go to your workpiece, first of all, this is for your contour elements. This is for your tooling. This is for your variable list, and this is for your macro blocks and stuff like that. We'll get to all those things later. But for this first video, just the basics. You've got your variable list, which is where you can put your sizes in, but this only works if you work on a variable formula, if that's the correct term. If you go to your tooling processes and you click on workpiece, you see over here there is a length in the X direction, width in the Y direction, and the thickness of the panel. So if I put in here 718 by 446 and I go back to my variable and I change my size to 3 meters by 3 meters, you'll see it's got absolutely no effect on the part because we've edited our actual part dimension. So the correct way of doing it is to leave this in a formula. Also, the formula doesn't need to be exactly like they've got it here. You can have this in X, and please note it's capital sensitive, Y, and thickness, or Z, as we say in South Africa. But then if it gives you a red indication like this, it means there's a problem because we've changed the formula, so we have to do the same formula over here. Now if I go and change my part size to difference, it will change the part. So that is how you change dimension and sizing of a panel. So what we need to do is, if we want to do a basic machining on the part, let's say we want to make a cutting of the machine all the way around this part, what we need to do then is we need to draw a line, as in a pencil line, all the way around your part, which the cutter can follow. So what we do is we go to contours, we click on this first one up here. This is all your lines and starting points and radiuses and stuff like that. So to start off with, let's say our part size is 718 by 446, which is a nice door size. I click on the starting point. I don't like to start on the edge. I always like to start in the center or on the edge of the board, not on the corner of the board. Especially for wrap, it's not a good thing to do. So what we need to do is we need to start in the direction. If you look at this diagram over here, it says your Y direction and your X direction. So I want to start in the Y direction on 0. This is my 0 plane. That is my length plane, in other words our X. That would be our Y position. So we want to go and click on it, click on the starting point. The X stays on 0, the Y needs to go to Y, either go 446 divided by 2, enter, then you'll see the starting point goes to the center. If you want to see what that value is, you click on that block and you go down here, and it will actually give you the dimension, which is 223, which is half. So now you can do it this way. You can also put in the halfway point. You can also do it the way I would do it, which is parametric, where you can take your Y. So you say Y. If I click on the picture, you'll see it will take that one to my Y position. We still stay on X0, but we want to take Y and we want to divide it into 2. So if I change my Y size, it will always stay in the center. Whereas if you hard-coded it in, it will stay in the hard-code position. So in other words, if you've put a 50 mil in here, it will stay on 50 mil, but we don't want that. We always want it to be in the middle of the panel, so that's why we say take our Y position, divide it into 2, and that's our starting point. Then after we've got a starting point, we need to put a line end point, because we need to draw a line to a point. So what we do is we click on it and we say X is correct, and then Y would be your Y position. We want to go clockwise around the pot in this case. You can go anti-clockwise as well if you want, but I prefer to go clockwise, so I put a Y dimension in there. Then I need to put another line in, so I just add another line, and now we change our X value, which is going to be X. You can also, of course, put your dimension in of 718, but obviously that's not the right way of programming. It's better to program it so you can change it. The only time you'll put a fixed value in there is when you've got two different lines going and you want one to stop at a specific point. So what we need to do then is we need to add another line, and we need to come down. So we just click on the Y and we make that 0, because then we go all the way to 0. Then we add another line, and the X needs to be 0. Now it's come to the X0, Y0 point. And then we need to go halfway up, so we need to add an extra line, and we say we want to go in the Y direction, so we say Y divided by 2, and it will take you halfway. Now that we've got our contour line, in other words our pencil line, let me just make this a bit smaller so it's nicer to see. Now what we need to do is we need to put a cutter on it, straight cutter, and then we need to give it a starting point, which is that point that we started with, and it automatically in woodwop, I think 7 and later, it automatically closes the contour. Or you can say my starting point is this point over here, and my finish point is this point over here. So there is two ways of doing this. You can also click on the bottom one and say make that 5, so it will start there and it will stop there. It's the same if the value of your starting point and your end point is exactly the same, then it doesn't matter. You can just tell it to start at the same place. Then you have the ability to go clockwise or anti-clockwise, so it doesn't matter how you've drawn your lines. You can go either way on that one over there. Your trimming direction, which way you want your cutter to turn, it obviously depends on tooling. And then of course you've got how your cutter is going to start. So in other words, it's going to start over here where the mouse is, and it's going to go in, and when it reaches this point, it will be at the correct depth that you've specified. Or you can say, come in at an angle, so it's going to start here where the mouse is now, and it's going to arc in, and then it's going to go all the way around, and it's going to tangent out. Then you can also, your entry and your exit, you can change differently. So you can tell it to stop on that point which you started, or you can tell it to go out at an arc. On the fly is when the cutter is over here, where it starts, before it starts arcing in, and then it will move down to the Z position. By the time it gets there, it will be on the correct position. So it will actually ramp down on the Z arc. Your Z position is how far the cutter is going to be below the part. Your 0 position on woodwop is the bottom of the part. Distance is how far your cutter is going to ride on that line. So if I put in there -10, it's actually going to go 10 millimeters inside the line the cutter. So in other words, instead of making new lines 10 millimeters in where the cutter can ride, you can just change this value, and it will automatically move the cutter 10 millimeters in or out. So if I make that a positive, it's going to go, the cutter is going to cut 10 millimeters away from that part. Conditions we'll handle at a later stage. Your tool number is where you're going to start, which tool you want to use. Your feed speed is how fast the cutter is going to go while it's busy cutting.